May the words of my lips and the meditations of all our hearts be now and always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So lots of different things happen in today's reading. It begins with Jesus sending the disciples away and going to join the crowd to disperse them. And then he goes off to a mountain to pray. And after he's prayed, obviously for some time, he walks on the water out to the boat where the disciples are having a bit of a hard time. So, what do we make of all this? And of course, there is Peter offering to get out of the boat. Just think about that. So what do we make of it all? Well, I think perhaps if we look at ourselves as the crowd rather than as Jesus, or perhaps as Peter a bit later, the first thing is that it is good to gather together, to share experiences, to listen to people who can help. And I guess if you look at the last 6 months, that is where we were 6 months ago. And then Jesus goes off to pray. And he tells all of us that we too need to go and pray on our own. But it is something that is frequently seen in the Gospels, that Jesus takes time out and goes to pray. And indeed, Martin Luther once said that he prayed an hour every day, except when he was very busy, because then he needed to pray for 3 hours a day. And there is a sense in which the times we most need to pray are the times when things are hardest. Yes, we always need to pray, but when things aren't going well, that is a time we need to pray more. And that perhaps covers the recent time. Although for those who were locked down for 12 weeks, I don't think Jesus was suggesting we went away for that long. And then Jesus comes out and walks on the water, walks towards the boat where the disciples are worrying because of the weather. Now, of course, it's worth remembering that the disciples were fishermen. So boats were their livelihood, their bread and butter. They knew what the weather could do. They knew what boats could do. They knew what they could do. So the fact that they were worrying perhaps says something about the severity of the storm. And then they see this figure walking towards them across the water. Now, if you were on a boat and you saw a figure walking across the water, I doubt that the first thing that you would think is, oh, good, it's Jesus come to sort things out. And we have the benefit of hindsight of having today's gospel reading, which of course the disciples didn't have. And then Peter says, if it's you, Lord, ask me to come and join you. Now, what kind of faith does that show? It's an incredible faith. And Jesus says, come and join me. So Peter gets out of the boat, and it's only, my interpretation would be when he's having second thoughts, that he starts to sink and Jesus has to rescue him. And there is a well-known Christian book. If you want to walk on water, you've got to get out of the boat. And for many of us, we don't know what we're capable of until we try it. There are people who have perhaps reached a certain stage of life where they no longer feel the need for challenges. But in a commentary on the Rule of Benedict, I suspect I've quoted before, one of the things that is said is that in a monastery, it is the abbot who decides what the monks can do, not the monks. And that very often it is when somebody else challenges us to do something that we discover that we have gifts and talents that we did not know we had. And the other thing to look at is that Peter started out in good faith and then wobbled, but there was someone there to hold his hand and lift him up. In the coming months, we are going to be looking for more people to help run the church. Not one or two to do it all, but lots of people, each to do a little bit. A couple of very simple examples. St George's don't currently have a church warden. If we don't get a church warden, there are two choices. All the things that church wardens have historically done, and church wardens should not have done all the things that they have done, either will not get done, or other people will have to do them. We've also just lost a safeguarding officer after 5 years' service. And again, we're looking for somebody to take that on. But it could be a team of people. There are a number of tasks associated with safeguarding, and they don't all have to be done by the same person. If each of us finds the little bit that we can do, or even that we might be able to do, and we work together, it will help us get through this. When Peter got out of the boat, I suspect, being Peter, he didn't know really what he was doing. Peter is the kind who's the first to put his hand up for everything without knowing quite what's involved. But sometimes that is what we are all called to. Not just those who are already involved and doing a lot, but those who are perhaps reticent to come forwards for one reason or another. As I say, it will be a little while before the details of this become apparent. But in the meantime, just think what it is you might be able to offer to help keep our churches functioning. Amen.